thank you, Honorable Chancellor, for attending this very important CEO webinar series. And on behalf of our founder, and on behalf of our Chancellor, and on behalf of our 175,000 students, deans, faculty, it's really our privilege to welcome Mr. Kishore Jayaraman, President for the Rolls-Royce India, and Mr. Sameer Gupta, Chairman and MD of Jackson India, in our CEO forum. This is indeed a very important initiative which Amity University has taken to reach to the most admirable and inspirational leaders of the industry and to bring them close to the academic world. Thank you so much for joining us today. For Amity and for the hundreds of students who will be watching you live, I think that it's a message that how industry in India is giving back to the academic world. We also want to inform you that this session is being recorded, and this will be telecasted to all the 175,000 students. It will be archived, and our students from all the 10 universities and 15 foreign campuses which we have worldwide will take advantage of listening to you and will be able to understand that what is your vision and how you have built your companies. At Amity, as you know, we are very strongly have a belief that unless we integrate education with the industry, it has no value. And that is the reason that why we have changed our entire syllabus to integrate it with the concept of education 4.0. Every week, students, they do an industry project, and we call the CEOs who have been the inspiration for the students to speak to the students. Before I read your biodata, I think that it's an intellectual treat for all the students which they're getting, and we are giving you a huge applause, and thank you very much. Students, let me now go through the brief profile of Mr. Kishore Jayaraman. Mr. Kishore Jayaraman is an inspirational leader and is a president for the Rolls-Royce India and South Asia. Since taking over the role 8 years ago, Mr. Kishore has been instrumental in driving strategic focus and significant expansion across the Rolls-Royce, defense, civil aerospace, and power systems business. Prior to joining Rolls-Royce, Mr. Kishore held diverse leadership roles across markets at GE for 23 years, and his last assignment was a president and CEO of the GE Energy South Asia. Cross-cultural guru and the person whom everyone admires with an MS in mechanical engineering and MBA, Mr. Kishore serves on several boards, and it is as one of the industry committees and associations, whilst being the champion for the leadership development and strategic ecosystem evaluation for the present and future. We have requested Mr. Kishore to be also on the board of the industry advisory board of Amity, and we look forward to listen to you, Mr. Kishore. We have with us Mr. Sameer Gupta, whom we say is a champion of champions and is a chairman and managing director of Jackson Group India, leading distributed energy solutions and EPC company, a second generation entrepreneur and alumnus of Harvard Business School. Sameer joined Jackson in the year 1991 and led its transformation from a small generator manufacturing company to a prominent power solution company. Mr. Sameer is supported by his young, dynamic, and vibrant brother, Sandeep, who is also managing Jackson Group. The business interests are across multiple lines of business, which includes generating set manufacturing, solar module manufacturing, solar off-grid products, hybrid solution, electrical EPC, solar land-based EPCs, transmission and distribution, metro electrification, defense powering, and repowering solution. We feel so proud on you and on your achievement. And Mr. Gupta, the way you are taking the Indian industry to the rest of the world. Jackson also has business interests in the area of civil infrastructure in India, real estate projects in UK, hospitality, and in education. Jackson has expanded its footprints across India and countries in Southeast Asia and Middle East Asia and Africa. Mr. Sameer Gupta, who is treated as a leader in the international business area, currently serves as the chairman of the CII Northern Region. He is also the member of Uttar Pradesh Investment Promotion Board. So Mr. Sameer is deeply committed to the CSR initiative, and over to both the leaders, the entire Amity University, their deans, faculty, our chancellor, and everyone else are really feeling so happy that you have joined on this webinar. Over to both of you.
So whichever way you want, I said, I can start if you want, whatever.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Well, okay. First of all, good evening to all of you, and thank you, Mr. Atul Chauhan, and everybody from Amity, as well as the students and everybody else who has taken out time to be part of this webinar. Thank you, Dr. Singh, for such a glorious introduction. You have already given the background of the company. I would like to very briefly say right up till 2010, we were only a genset company. And it was the Lehman Brothers crisis, which we witnessed in 2010, when our revenues degrew from 1,000 crores then to 700 crores in a short span of just 2 years. And as I often say, this Lehman Brothers crisis was a blessing in disguise for us because there was lots to learn. We diversified into adjacent areas after this Lehman Brothers crisis in 2012. Got into solar IPP, took this challenge of doing EPC ourselves, which gave us exposure of uh, transmission distribution and doing solar EPC as well as some civil work. And then we thought, why not get into these adjacent areas, which has got a huge potential in this country and even otherwise. Today, we have been able to position ourselves as a EPC solution, as a distributed energy and a solar company. And currently, we have revenues of close to 2,500 odd crores. Uh, the big difference, what we witnessed during Lehman Brothers crisis was that it was just a mere financial crisis, where today what we have seen, which is COVID, it's both economical as well as infrastructural crash. Secondly, during Lehman's time, if some of you would recall, the stock fell by 30% over a period of 2 years. It was a gradual fall, whereas currently the stock has fallen by 30% in a short span of just 30 days all across the world, and it has been literally free fall of economy. So they're very different experiences, resulting to same thing, although, and the learnings hence therefore from COVID is they're going to be a lot more. I'm happy to share that during these testing times as well, our employees have demonstrated that their actions are absolutely aligned to companies' core purpose and values. And over last few days, while we were in lockdown, we have been able to brainstorm, spend a lot of time together. As a matter of fact, we have been busier than ever, and all we have been doing is preparing Jackson for the next leap. And I can, happily say that we have been able to figure out many things which we would be doing over next few years. Briefly, I will just take a couple of minutes to talk about Jackson's core purpose and values, which are like our soul, which I often say. Core purpose of the company is to enhance the quality of life for all stakeholders by creating a sustainable organization. While this has been a focus over years, over last couple of weeks when it was a lockout, we got a chance to reflect back, and we have renewed, strengthened our governance structure. We have strengthened our communication strategy, various processes, systems, controls, etc. And we could also take various decisions, which definitely will make company a lot more robust and sustainable for times to come. Uh, I think we have been very effectively able to step up engagement more than communication. I'm using the words engagement with all stakeholders, be it employees, be it vendors, be it customers, and of course, most importantly, the society as well. And we often talk about the 5 values at Jackson. I will briefly again talk about them. We believe in walking the talk. Our values are, first one being integrity. What we have done in last few days is we have very transparently, in a very frank and an open manner, shared all information updates with all the stakeholders, more so with employees in a very regular, frequent manner. It amounted to over communication, but I guess it was necessary to keep the cohesive group together. We have even shared the pain very transparently. We have been as authentic as one could be. And by the way, this has been appreciated by all the stakeholders. Our second value is being customer centric. And what we have done in this period of lockout is there have been customers webinars. We have been able to create a lot of awareness about Jackson, what this new Jackson has been over last 7-8 years amongst our, again, various customers and stakeholders. I have been able to do one-on-one meetings over video conferencing with many CEOs, so that I could share with them what is the future, what is the vision of Jackson in future, and how strong we are going to be as we move forward in this journey. The third value is innovation. And at least I'm pretty convinced, disruptions are going to be happening a lot more faster than what we used to think. Probably what would have otherwise happened in the next 8-10 years with this COVID experience, I think it's going to happen probably in the next 2-3 years. We could, in last few days work on our IT roadmap, which has been kind of hanging loose since a while, which clearly we have decided to implement it over the next 3 years. We have been able to firm up our digital strategy, what we want to be in next 2 to 3 years. And again, the whole objective is that this IT, how it's going to help us bring down the cost, improve efficiency, and of course have better controls on everything. The fourth value is teamwork. We have been able to, by the way, again, give a lot more time to our teams to not only give them feedback, but also to take feedback. And this has been a great insight, by the way. Upskilling, reskilling through webinars has been a constant process over the last 2 weeks. We have been sharing success stories on social media. Teams have very successfully collaborated to achieve the company's goal. And this has been pretty motivating to all the employees. And finally, the last value, which is again very important and core to our heart, is care. Of course, focus on safety, health, and immunity has been there higher than ever in the past. And I would say that our honorable Prime Minister has been often talking about Swachh Bharat and yoga, how important these are going to be, how important role these are going to be playing in our life. We have realized it now. We have also realized the importance of society, and the fact that we were connected because of the virtual world. Otherwise, we were literally practically alone in last few weeks. We have stepped up our CSR activities to ensure availability of food, groceries, medicines, etc., to the needy people around our infrastructure. So this is broadly about our core purpose and the values. I want to briefly speak about some innovative business strategies that we could implement over last 2 to 3 weeks in the business. The first thing we did was some scenario mapping. We did realize that manpower, money, and material, 3 important ingredients to make any business successful, would be a challenge, not only now, but even going forward over short term, there is going to be a challenge around these 3 critical resources. So what we did was we have simulated 2 business scenarios as to what this year is going to look like, year 2020-21. We have worked out the best case. We have worked out the worst case as well. In the worst case, we have assumed that due to various limitations and the fact that first quarter is going to be literally a washout quarter, we would probably degrow by 15 to 20%. And in the best case, we have assumed that we are going to be doing revenues what we have been able to do as of March 31st, 2020 in the coming year. So these are the 2 cases we have kind of simulated. Having said this, we have worked on a cost structure that would support the worst case scenario, and any upside where if we move towards best case or anywhere in the middle, it's going to be a win-win for both for the company as well as employees. And we are pretty convinced that while coming one year is going to be challenge as far as growth is concerned, we are certainly strongly poised to grow in the coming years. Some of the things what we have thought we are going to be implementing for years to come in our businesses to keep our fixed costs low and let the variable component be high. So that has been one of the learnings out of this recent COVID experience and deep dive. What's going to happen is that we will be able to ring fence companies, professionals, and any upside would benefit both employees and the company. Secondly, what we have decided to do is we are anyway a pretty low leverage company. So we are going to be absolutely, this is going to be a strategy which we are going to be continuing to focus on. At the same time, we have decided to be zero debt over the next 2 years. So to have zero leverage. The third thing is that we have been able to work out a contingency plan where we can support all our stakeholders should this kind of crisis, God forbid, ever happen again. And in fact, we have documented a crisis management strategy. Finally, we had figured out areas of waste and we're committed to eliminate all the possible waste from the organization. We are developing lean manufacturing strategy. We would be using 3D printing and automation basically to improve productivity and quality and ensure that there is agility in the system. So that's the first strategy. The second is, of course, which we are all doing currently as we talk, as we communicate, as we interact, it's work from home that we are convinced is going to be a way of life. I would say we are lucky to have this virtual connectivity. Otherwise, life would have been much, much tougher. Uh, there is a realization that work from home is helping actually the entire world in lowering emissions and bringing down the transportation demand. And by the way, by doing this, we have been able to conserve resources. Not only we, the entire world apparently is witnessing and realizing that they have been able to conserve resources and also protect the environment, because pollution level has definitely come down significantly all over the world. So this is going to my mind, this is going to open up some areas. There is going to be some regulatory new business opportunities are going to open up out of this. We have also realized that our life has become more aligned by working from home. The work-life balance has become more aligned. That's another realization we have, and we do feel, at least that's what we intend to do at Jackson, that once life is back to normal, we will continue to have some work from home so that the objectives of conserving resources and the environment and protect us from pollution we are able to meet that. The next strategy we have been able to again focus over last 15 days is the people strategy. We have been able to renew our org structures. We have worked out strategy to have resilient talent pipeline. We have been able to focus on outcome-based performance, work plans, and that's for the entire leadership team, by the way, myself included. A lot of deliberations have happened literally every day, reviewing the work plans, and they have become so robust now, which is going to help the company in coming times. We are now working on a performance and reward strategy, again, with a basic thought that it got to be win-win for both for the company as well as the employees. And talking briefly about opportunities after COVID, I think along with climate change and sustainable environment, which has been a key focus for all across the world, health will be an important focus area, because if health is there, everything is there. So that's I think three things is where world is going to focus on from now on, which is climate change, sustainable environment, and health. The second impact is going to be, of course, on supply chains. I'm sure we are all pretty clear on it. Supply chains are going to very evidently diversify, and there got to be a second source, and ideally closing to the manufacturing facility. And perhaps world will start moving towards self-sufficiency, which will again result in many more opportunities. Perhaps new manufacturing facilities which are going to come up would be closer to the places where manpower is easily available, rather than manpower migrating to cities and towns, which will again bring need of upskilling and reskilling. That's going to be, I think, on topmost priority of most of the companies. Infrastructure focus certainly will improve, and that's another area which is going to open up a lot of opportunities, perhaps for all of us, students in particular. That's going to boost economy and be a job creator for sure. Since this supply chain is going to diversify, we need to keep on scouting for opportunities, as many companies we keep reading day in, day out want to set up their shops with their manufacturing facilities in the country. And I'm happy to share, as Jackson, by the way, we have taken a strategic decision to invest and expand in our solar module manufacturing facility in Greater Noida. In these tough times, in the last 15 days, we could work together, make a business plan, and that's what we're going to do almost on immediate basis. And the last strategy we could work on was, as Mr. Singh said, that we are second generation into business. It's me and my brother. I have got two sons. My brother has got two sons. The third generation is going to be in business over the next 3 to 5 years. And by the way, we made a family constitution document about a year back, and that was with the objective, and you might be aware, 97% of the business families, they disintegrate and separate out as the third generation comes in. So we have made a huge commitment as a family that we are not going to disintegrate, we're going to be together. The family constitution document, which was written about 1.5 years back, we have been able to give enough time as family to renew the document, to update the document, which will, by the way, help us sustain both the family and the businesses in coming time. So I think we got good quality time where not only we could bond as family, but we could also plan our future. So these are the few strategies we could work on. And I would just list, before I hand over to Mr. Jayaraman, I would like to share few learnings which has been there, not only out of this COVID experience, but also ever since at least I have been working closely into the business. One is, when things are not doing well, first thing is we got to accept it. We don't have to be negative. We don't have to be overtly optimistic also. Acceptance is the first thing. Once we accept, we can work towards the solution. If we are in a denial mode, we just can't work towards the solution. That's one. Number two, there would be situations in life. It's not only about crisis. Even when going is good, I think it's worthwhile slowing down at times, reflect, renew, and reprioritize what you would like to do and how would you like to move forward. So that's the second learning. The third learning is very interesting. What we also realized over the last 15 days, that internal teams within the organizations are actually ocean of knowledge. And we have been able to create, at least half a dozen strategies. We have been able to document it, which is going to drive our future, which is going to give us a direction as we move forward. And all these strategies have been internally written without depending on any external source. So this gives me a realization that we got to, prioritize time for this. As we move forward, also once in a while, take out time, reflect, and probably review your strategy. I would also say, don't take success for granted. Bankruptcy at times comes overnight. We must, do whatever we need to do to future-proof our business. So that's something which is going to be important. Again, a realization: manage today and tomorrow, not yesterday. Yesterday is gone. Something we can't do nothing about it. Our actions of today can only help us plan our future, plan our tomorrow. So manage today and tomorrow, not yesterday. Finally, I won't hesitate in saying, best way to predict future is to create it. So this is one of the sayings I'd heard long back, that is continues to be one of my favorite quotes. And I think in last 15 days we have been able to realize how appropriate this quote is. Also a realization that India has a culture of savings, by the way. I think that culture is going to catch up. We have realized often in last 20 years, after having seen some recessions, that cash is king. Even despite having realized, we tend to spend or overspend. I think now there is going to be a clear realization where people, and that's going to be my suggestion to youngsters as well. Don't spend your projected future earnings today. This is going to help us over a long time. Be content. This doesn't mean that we don't have to grow. Don't be greedy. Don't be envy. Growth got to have some kind of an objective, some kind of a goal. So that's something I would advise to students. And finally, I would say, as we have realized, there is we got to contribute to the cause. Don't be just governed by your rights. Be governed by your duties. Once we start thinking that way, the whole perspective, the way we look at this world will start changing. And even as students, even as individuals, we got to do whatever we can to contribute to the cause. And finally, I would say that there has been a discovery of new definition of love. We keep hearing this word, and amongst youngsters, probably this is a very common word. I think it's more about peace and harmony. I think love is spirit of helping selflessly. And if we all can role model and create examples for society, for family, I think we will be able to create a sustainable world. So that's from my side, and happy to answer any queries, any questions that anybody would have in the audience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samir. That was really good. So I thought I'll kind of split my conversation with you all into 3 or 4 areas. One is talk a little bit about Rolls-Royce and what we've been doing over the last 2-3 weeks as we try to conquer the coronavirus globally. And second, I thought I'll talk a little bit about innovation and how innovation is going to be different as we look into the future. And the third thing I thought I'll talk about will be the current situation in 3 different scenarios and how the rest of the year will look like and how 2021 might unfold. Last but not the least is a couple of thoughts from my side in terms of the future. So if that's okay with everyone, I'll start with Rolls-Royce. I think we were all humming along fine There were plans established for 2020 in January. There were strategies in play, and life was all but rosy. And then around February, things started getting worse, and by March, things have gotten really worse. And then right now, we all face ourselves sitting within the confines of our four walls. And what has been interesting through this journey was we had created the business continuity plans, but the situation kind of accounted for earthquakes, accounted for some terrorist attacks, accounted for some IT failures. But what it did not account for is a virus that's going to take down the entire world. In a sense that, we could have done a lot of things very differently if we had thought about it also, but then those are all lessons learned. As we looked at the business continuity process, what became more and more apparent is because it's a virus, we also needed the health and safety and environmental organization, our HSNE as we call it, people taking the leadership in making sure that not only are we communicating the right messages, but we are also making sure that people are not scared or people don't go into a different form of anxiety or whatever. From our HSNE point of view, we started looking at it and started communicating to our people that it's very important to look at the physical capability of the individuals as well as the mental capability of the individuals. One thing that I don't think I have ever experienced in my entire life is having to sit at home for this extended period of time. And even after the first week, it was but obvious to me that if I don't take care of my physical health, it is going to have a problem once I come out of this lockdown. But it was also very clear that the mental health has to be in equally good place. And so a combination of the physical and mental health was absolutely important as we went through, and it was not just me, but our entire company. And we started looking at this very regularly and talking to people very regularly. It was also extremely important that the operations continued and people are able to contribute to the company in whatever form they can. There are certain functions where we have been able to do a lot of work outside of our workplace, for example, engineering services, but it also taught us that we had to get export controls in place. We had to worry about data privacy. We had to worry about, enabling people working from home. So it took us a lot of efforts over the first week and a half, and we still go through some of those in certain areas. But for most part, I think we are kind of stable where we're able to operate from home and also generate productivity as we look at the rest of this shutdown. And as we went through all this, and there's been lots of learning, so communication stepped up for us, and they were being able to make sure that employees are all connected. We had government relations step up to understand what is all happening around us. We had the HSNE people step up and make sure people are all well. The well-being was being taken care of. And then we had the leadership globally also looking at what should our strategies be as we go forward, and leadership in country like in India or in South Asia looking at what we should do as we go forward. So there are lots of plans in place, but the difficulty with all these plans and everything is that nobody knows what is going to happen in a week's time. Well, maybe we all know for the next 2 weeks, we're all going to be sitting indoors. But I think after 2 weeks, when we all come out of this, how is the world going to look? And in that, if you look at our businesses, if you look at our civil aerospace business, it's the most impacted because all the airlines have shut down, all the flights are being grounded, all the countries are being closed. So it's been one of the most difficult period in terms of revenue generation from a civil aerospace side. The defense aerospace is a little bit complicated game, and it's a longer game. So I think, it is one of those areas where we continue to look at strategies. We continue to look at how we can focus on whatever comes out of this at the end of the day. Power Systems is a very different business, very short cycle business. As you know, we have a joint venture with Force Motors in Pune. We were going to start production imminently until when we had this shutdown situation. So we had to relook and rethink the whole thing, which means our business case has to be evaluated, which means all the returns have to be evaluated and the entire financials have to be involved. So you can imagine how that sets everything back. But having said this, I think I was just looking and trying to figure out about innovation a little bit, and I read something from Robert Tucker, and he is a big speaker on innovation, innovative ideas, and he represents himself in the field of innovation with many companies globally. And he said 3 things which I thought were very relevant to our conversation today. One is that it is about change, it is about creativity, and it is about courage. And if you take the situation that we are in, I mean, obviously there is a change. And the change is something that we do not control. And this change is something that is going to be imposed on us whether we like it or not. So it is a lot of things that people are not used to, that they're getting used to. People who thought that this will never happen are getting used to the fact it has happened. So the change is different. The change is there, and it is definitely a place where innovation will thrive. But innovation needs a lot of creativity. It is about taking a value that is created out of the existing conditions that brings more value to the stakeholders and to the ecosystem around us. And for that, creativity is the one that fosters that. But we are having to foster, we are having to have creativity in a very constrained environment now. We are used to all this blue ocean strategies. We are used to all this different way of thinking out of the box. But I think in this current situation, a lot of people are thinking inside the box. And it is a very different way of thinking. It's a very different way of modeling our world, both business-wise and financial-wise and personal-wise. So I think creativity is being given a change as well. So if you look at just the change being one where change for business betterment, value creation is one piece, but creativity being changed about how we become creative is something that a lot of people are experiencing firsthand right now. And last but not the least is courage. I think right now, if you look at any company, revenues are down big time. Cost has not gone away. So basically, you've got to balance the equation in such a way that you're able to pay people, you're able to continue with some of the works that we created without having any revenues. And it is very hard. But the idea is companies that are able to go through this and come out the other side, without really facing major disruption in terms of people or in terms of finances, are the ones that are going to be successful. And that's a very hard thing. So in Rolls-Royce, we think about it on a daily basis. So we kind of look at it and look at our cash positions. We look at what are the things that are necessary. We look at what are non-essential. And we kind of work ourselves on a daily basis about reinventing ourselves so that at the end of this, and there will be an end to this, just like everything else, and we will definitely be able to come out of this without suffering damages that will not be recoverable. So we want to be, everybody suffers damages, but we want to be able to come out the other side so that it's a reversible damage and we will get through this as well. And interestingly, as I was going through this and thinking about all these things, one other interesting terminology that I found, which I thought would be useful for you guys, was cognitive fixedness. And cognitive fixedness is something which says that a state of mind where our minds are tuned to a specific way of thinking and a specific way of analyzing. And we have already thought about what is it that the outcome should look like. And I think that is something that is being challenged right now, because if we are unable to overcome the cognitive fixedness and think very differently, the other side of this whole pandemic will be very different. So the other side of the pandemic, if I look at it, I would say there are three scenarios in my mind. Scenario one is a rosy picture where everybody is tired of sitting inside. Everybody's not had a good vacation. People have not traveled to visit relatives, friends. And so people start doing that more and more. And I think that should increase the revenues for the companies, the airlines, the hotels, the malls, the restaurants. So at the end of the day, all of them should see bigger growth than what they would have seen if we didn't have this pandemic. And so that is scenario one, where it's a rosy picture, the cup is half full, and so we can look at how to fill the rest of the cup faster. The scenario two is where it's all doom and gloom and, unable to probably come out of this, and the whole thing unwinds, continues for a longer period of time. The cure or the vaccine, etc., become more and more challenging. The spread happens more and more. Then it becomes a little bit harder scenario for us in 2020. The more realistic thing is there would be some form of a cure, and there will be some form of a vaccine within a year or 6 to 18 months time frame. And it looks like everybody will want to take over scenario one, but in principle in a more controlled way, because all the companies, all the individuals are all going to be thinking about what could happen if the cure is not announced or if the cure is not available. And so I do see that in 2020 that there's going to be a lot of challenges, and there will still be a period of time, a 3-month or a 6-month window, wherein we will still be recovering from this whole thing, and then things start going more and more towards normalcy towards the end of the year. But having said this, what is very important, in this whole situation is that habits are broken. Right? I think what we thought was a norm is no longer the norm. What we thought, what we took for granted is no longer to be taken as granted. So we need to be aware that habits have been broken. But it's a good thing, because when the habits are broken, it's always possible for us to create new habits which are better than the ones that we already had and thought that was golden. So I think in that regard, it's going to be a good thing. The second thing is, I think people have to stop thinking about what happened, how could we have done this better, what is it we should have done better. We are all doing everything as much as we can, and we should look at what is the future going to look like and how do we represent ourselves into that future. There's a good saying which always says that don't waste a good crisis. I think we are in one of the best crises the world has ever faced, sadly as it may be, and many families have lost their near and dear ones. But in all this, at the end of the day, there is a lesson to be learned. And I think if we come out and learn this lesson well, I think we will all be better people for that. So I would say it is very important for us to understand that this thing will be behind us as well. But when this thing gets behind us, who will we be? Who will our companies be? And who will we be as a civilization is going to matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jayaraman, and thank you, Mr. Gupta. For the talk. I think it was very informative, and we have a plethora of questions that have been asked by our students. So if you allow, we can quickly go on to the Q&A session. So the first thing that comes to mind is, because of this COVID and the lockdown, the business and communities in many regions have shown a more altruistic response in the face of crisis and actions which could help countries preparing for COVID-19. Do you feel that this upbeat sentiment will persist or weaken as markets open?
That's a very interesting one. To my mind, what's currently happening is, as I said, even otherwise, even in normal life, you have to. So it's all about prioritizing. Today, irrespective of the country, the first priority is going to be health, or bringing the curve down, or controlling the curve. I think India also, to a great extent, has been able to suppress the curve. It is today's anybody's guess what kind of recovery we're going to see, whether it is going to be L-shaped or a V-shaped, or perhaps a W-shaped. We don't know. So I think that uncertainty over short term is so high that you can't really have any kind of a fixed formula for having a specific approach. It will vary from geography. It will vary from country to country. It will depend on what kind of impact and intensity is there in various regions. And it will keep evolving, to my mind. I don't think over short term we can have a fixed formula, a fixed way of thinking towards handling the issue.
Mr. Jayaraman, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think, if you look at it, what is wonderful is the compassion and the empathy shown by a lot of the business leaders. And it shows that we still have a human side to things. And I think that will continue, because you cannot take that out of a human being. Business definitely will take over. I think as we go more and more towards normalcy, the capabilities of people will be tested more and more. I think as they continue on, we will return to a phase where the performance is measured and the finances play a role in terms of how many people can be employed, how payments can be made for salaries and other details. But the beauty of what this crisis has brought about is the humanity and the humanitarian thoughts that many of the business communities have been able to garner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, one other question that mushrooms up when you talk about the compassion, and I'm sure that the industry has shown a lot of compassion and, a lot of, I would say, the strength that it is with their people. But, there is a lot of question, a lot of doubts still in the mind of people. And the question that mushrooms up is that as businesses are closed to help prevent transmission of COVID-19, financial concerns and job losses are one of the first human impacts. So do you think if this lockdown is extended any further, that these fears or speculations might actually turn into a reality?
Couple of I will put this question into probably two different buckets. Irrespective whether lockdown gets further extended or not, which at least in India there is still a chance it might get extended, because I think the whole effort of the country, and rightly so, is to suppress the curve. And if we are able to do it, probably we could see a different kind of recovery, both from this impact of COVID as well as economy. The pay cuts to great extent would be a reality. At the same time, so far what I have seen interacting with India Inc. various companies is that at least they have ensured that the lower income group are not impacted by any of the pay cuts. So they are at least ensuring, to the point what Mr. Jayaraman also said, there is compassion, and they are ensuring that at least the basics are being taken care of. I do believe that India Inc. As well as the government together will figure out to ensure that at least the basic needs of human beings are met irrespective. So that's one thought. Number two, as I said, culturally India believes in saving, and that's something we need to deeply think. We tend to really spend our future forecasted earnings as well. That's something I think we should, as things improve, start thinking very differently, bring back savings into place. Ultimately, that feeling of contentment is very, very important. It's not about growth, as I said, it's about how content you are. And finally, I would say it's also one from employees standpoint, one got to be more duty bound rather than just looking at rights. We have been so used to working for incentives with lack of initiative. So we got to do something as a country, as a society, where there is enough initiative also from all of us to look at the larger cause. Today, look at it, what these doctors, nurses, policemen, or security or emergency service suppliers are doing for us, but for them, they are not doing out of any incentive. They are doing it out of initiative. So that's the a thought process we need to bring in. So if these three things are in place, I think this country is strong enough to take care of each and every person who exists who's there in this country.
Yeah. Sorry, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, in my view, I think if this will not go on forever, I think there's always an end point. The thing is that what is that end point? Right? And the longer that end point gets to, the harder it becomes for companies, because at the end of the day, there is cost. And if the revenues are not there and the cost keeps increasing, it's either a grant or a loan, or it's burning up the cash in the company. So at the end of the day, I think it will have an impact as this continues further and further out. What that impact is will vary from company to company, country to country. And the economies of the world are anyway short right now. And I think it is going to get worse before it gets better. But having said all this, 2008, the entire world was collapsing. The financial community was all up in arms and saying, how do we go about fixing this? But eventually it did come out, and 10 years later, economies were stronger than ever before. And so I believe that even after this, it will get over someday. Nobody knows when. And I think the right point of when it will be over is when there's a cure, so that people don't die, and beyond that, a vaccine. But the good thing out of all these things is it won't be forever. Definitely, we'll have to see how long it goes to. And the third thing is we'll all get through this and we'll get out of it properly on the other side. There will be damages. How much is a question, big question.
Well, couldn't agree more. I think, yes, it will not last forever, and change is the only constant. The next question is being asked by our faculty, Dr. Kokil Jain, and this is for Mr. Jayaraman. She asked that individuals have reverted to the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy. But contradicting that, Hermes store in China made a record $2.7 million in their first day open post-COVID. So how post-COVID trajectories for luxury brands will differ from their previous ones?
Well, I think post-COVID, people are going to be thinking very differently. I feel, we've been changed forever because I don't think any of us on this call or listening to this call or whoever they are will ever say that their life has not been changed in some form or fashion. And if life changes in some form or fashion, branding becomes very different. Companies that are big brands, the way marketing happens is all going to be very different. The values perceived by the consumer is going to be very different. So I think companies are going to do things very differently. Travel will be different. People wanting to travel will be different. People not wanting to, travel is going to be different. So it's going to make a lot of changes in everybody, which means that the values as perceived by the consumer is going to be very different. And so I think for marketing and branding, it is going to be a world where unless they look at value creation from all aspects, it'll be a very difficult proposition to continue to grow at the same pace they were growing pre-COVID.
The other question that we have is from Nidhi Mishra, and she says, "Thank you for such an insightful session. I'll be grateful if you can throw some light on the fact that since India as a nation has suffered a lesser degree of damage as compared to many other European countries or US for that matter, how will this benefit us in terms of creating innovative strategies post COVID-19?
So again, I would say that it's going to be all about learnings and what we are looking at over a longer term rather than a shorter term. We again, we got to be very clear on our goal. India is a very different country. We have a population of 136 crores, and that's a huge population. Almost 20% of the population, global population, is in this country. So if you wear government's hat, I think the way we will need to look at things strategically would be very, very different. We as a country can't afford, really job losses. We can't afford to lose focus on agro. A lot of livelihood depends on farming, on farmers, and to the point which was being made earlier also. I'm pretty convinced that discretionary spend will totally come down. People will stop looking at luxuries. The basics will come back, which is going to be health, safety, food, shelter. So all the strategies over short, when I say short term, to my mind, over next 6 months to 1 year, I don't think recovery is going to happen very fast. To my mind, it's going to be L followed by probably a U. So for next 1 year, this got to be the way of life. We got to be clear on our priorities, which again I'm repeating, it's going to be health, safety, food, and shelter. And then of course education, for which various formats are going to kick in. So that's going to be at least my view. I'm happy to hear Mr. Kishore's view.
I think I don't want to jinx it by saying India is doing well versus other countries. So I'm just going to refrain from that and say that, look, we've been lucky so far, and keep our fingers crossed that this is the peak and we are probably going to see the backside of this virus. But having said that, I think, it is going to be, there are going to be some learnings that we all would do as companies. But what is most important is I think we will all look at things very differently. And like I said in the previous point, our strategies for the future are going to be based very differently on the needs of humanity, on the needs of company survival in crisis moments. So the thinking is going to be very different. When a company was thinking cash flow before, they'll be thinking about what happens when there is a business disruption to the cash flow. They have been thinking about generating cash flow, but now they look at the disruption and the effect of the disruption on cash flows. At the end of the day, they're going to look at what a customer is going to look for. When it was a world that was looking at what is important in terms of carbon and how much of environments have to be looked at, they will look at it and say that we need to include the effects of a virus as part of the environment, and then look at things differently. I've not heard a speech about the viruses, but I've heard plenty of speeches about carbon and how we got to reduce the carbon and how the ozone layer is going away, how the oceans are growing and the icebergs are melting. But now we'll start thinking more differently about viruses. And so, strategies will evolve, keeping in play a very different sort of sort of a concern or a challenge that could pose threat to us. And I think with every challenge they learn, but hopefully we are able to take this challenge and say, what is it that we are not thinking about for tomorrow that could become the next challenge? Is it going to be cyber security? Is it going to be terrorism? Is it going to be some other form of virus? So I hope the world is preparing these strategies in a proactive manner, because I think for a large part we all have been reactive, and part of it is due to complacency, as you can notice in the Western world. They are affected a lot. And could it be because of complacency? Could it be because they could have done their healthcare system even better? Lots of questions to be answered at the end of this.
Very rightly said, sir. I believe we saw one of the videos and the talks by Bill Gates, and where he mentioned that the world or the economies have invested a lot in terms of nuclear disarmament and a lot of allied areas. But what we really need to see is these health issues and these pandemics. So I think this is the new strategies that the companies, that the countries would be taking, where the larger threat is viruses rather than any other security threat. So this next question is for you, Mr. Jayaraman, and it has been asked by Dr. Akansha Singh. She says that to realize changes within a company, we need to find people that are passionate. And as the 3 C's suggested by you, having creative, change, and courage, can you please suggest in regards to job creation post-COVID, what are the specific skill sets that companies would look for in their existing employees and the newer employees that they hire?
That's an interesting question. I think, assuming the first thing is it'll be very good if we continue on the same trajectory, because we have not lost all the people, or we have figured out a way to retain most of the people. That means that we'll continue on a trajectory. But it is not going to change a whole lot, because I think a lot more of thinking, either it be finances or it be digital or it be any sphere of a company, there is a lot more focus on cognitive senses. And so I think companies are going to more and more continue to hire people with philosophy, sociology, anthropology majors, because along with a finance background, if a person has the ability to think in a very different manner, I think companies will look very different. And you can see that's happening already with artificial intelligence. So they're hiring more people with those 3 fields that I mentioned. And I think that will continue. We cannot lose the basic skills, because manufacturing will exist, and I think services will exist. So I think all the basic skills will continue to play out. The companies, or at least for the short term, I think they will look at a little bit more in terms of maximizing the productivity of the existing employees, and then slowly, gradually increasing the intake, so that if ever a crisis like this happens again, they're able to also not lose people or have to do some immediate and more predictable. I think that's what will happen, in my view.
I would like to add to one point to what Mr. Kishore said. I also firmly believe that while certain skills of the past will always remain, values would be the new skill set which we will be looking at youngsters. I'm pretty convinced about it. Find this technology, IoT, AIs of the world would be required to improve quality and productivity. That's all going to be there. But values will have a big role to play in coming times.
Absolutely, we couldn't agree more. There's this question, I think, and this comes from the student who has, just joined the program in our university. And I think these are some of the questions which are very prominent. So I have a question by our student Ria Oberoi, and she says that she is a first-year BBA student. And as you have mentioned that, they've been attending a lot of webinars that have been hearing new normal. So it will be a new world we will enter. What is your advice on how we should prepare ourselves for future? And, her area of interest is marketing and business development. So how do you feel that how should this generation who has just come into the universities, what skill sets they would require in the new normal?
I would give my inputs to this. My suggestion would be, of course, the whole world is going to be pretty virtual hereafter. As I said, work from home is going to be reality. We are going to be leveraging technology, which is going to take leapfrog from where we are. Uh, Technology will play a significant role in all our day-to-day actions, be it marketing, be it any other thing. So digital marketing will be the key thing. That's something what you should focus on. And again, this culture, suddenly we have seen in last 20 days, plethora of webinars and training happening over virtual platforms. This is going to get a lot more structured. To my mind, it is not very structured currently because everybody has suddenly wants to increase engagement, has gone into it. So there is going to be a lot of structure behind what we are seeing in last 15-20 days. That's the area you got to be focusing on. Physical exhibitions, physical seminars, conferences will certainly come down, and that will get replaced again with any of these kind of technological solutions. So probably you got to think deeper, have a think tank as to what could be an answer where companies can continue to penetrate, continue to create awareness by using any media, any technology which is based out of digital and virtual platform.
Yeah, a little differently. I think there are two things that comes to my mind immediately. The first one is everyone knows what value they're delivering to the company. Whether we work from home or whether we work from the office, we all know that there's a certain expectation of what we need to give back to the company. Not all of us are in the revenue generation. Not all of us are in the expenditure segment. But bottom line is we all know what is expected of us. And the companies that have metrics, very strong metrics, will find it a lot easier because when employees start working from home, it's going to be very hard to measure the output of whether they are being as productive as they can be or is there more to give. And so those kind of answers to those questions are only going to come when the employee is able to show the value very clearly of what they're generating for the company in a very tangible form. And by the same token, the company has to make sure that the employee is clear on the expectations from the company in his or her evaluation. And if that is not there, then there'll be a lot of action, a lot of kicking the can. But at the end of the day, the outcomes might not be relevant or the outcomes might not be up to the mark. So I think I would say be always, keep an ear to the ground, listen to what is being said or what is not being said. And I think it is extremely important to understand the needs of the company by the hour if people are going to be in this new norm. And only then will that ensure that the employee is able to continue to do that value creation.
Great. Sirs, there have been a plethora of questions that have been asked, and each time I ask a question, three more which are typed in the chat box. So if you allow, I would take a last question from one of our students.
Okay, sure.
So I would request comments from both our speakers on this question. So it is asked by Anantu Krishna, and it says many economists have predicted a zero growth scenario in the Indian economy, while they've predicted countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh will achieve some growth. But yesterday, Niti Aayog Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar strongly opposed the predictions and said Indian economy will flourish after this COVID scenario. So what are your take on this? How will the Indian economy fare after the COVID pandemic?
And since it's the last question, maybe that we can combine all the questions, Gaurav, because I think that I am getting number of requests. Students, they really want to listen to both the industry leaders. I think that there are questions which are related with the placements, internships, about the share prices, how economy will be doing, the World Bank estimates. And Mr. Kishore, I think that there is a compliment which is coming from Dubai campus for you. And they are saying that today when the stock market is closing, your shares have increased to 11.68%. I think the closing price was 341 rupees 80 paisa. So congratulations to you. But the question is quite tough. They're saying that when the economy is coming down and people are facing so many challenges, we can see not only L-shaped recovery, but in your company, V-shaped recovery, because suddenly the prices of your company going from nowhere to straight 11.68%. So we can say that the worst is over, because from 23rd March, when the Sensex was 7,800 and today to 9,325, do you think that the students don't have to worry? There will be similar kind of placements. They can get similar kind of packages, or what should be their strategy? As you know, that most of the people are saying that India and China are going to gain from this particular issue which the whole world is facing. Do you feel the same, or do you think that the recovery will only be to few luxury brands and to few multinational companies, whereas the mid-sized companies they will suffer?
Well, a couple of things. I'd first say that this is in my personal opinion. I'm saying this, and I think I'm very thankful that the Rolls-Royce stock went up, but we've also seen the Rolls-Royce stock go down some time back. So I guess that there are many reasons why these things keep going up and down, and more so now than ever before, because then companies are trying to figure out what will they be in the new world. So I'm very appreciative of the fact it's up. But a bigger thing is, I think if you look at it, the way I am a little bit bullish about this whole thing, because out of any crisis, at the end of the day, there's always going to be good things that come out. And if you look at this, I feel that there's going to be an immediate surge in terms of the needs of people. And at the end of the day, everything that happens in the business world is to satisfy the needs of humanity. And the needs of humanity are only going to increase over the next period of 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months. And I think in order to ramp up and to meet it, there will be always more demand than supply. And so the world is going to be very different that way. Will companies hire more? Will companies do more of graduates and people like that? I think companies will be needing people to get the jobs done, and I think they will look at it and say that they got to hire the right people for the right jobs. And so I do believe that employment opportunities will increase, and definitely some have been lost and hopefully will be regained. The thing I am not very sure about is the pace at which this will go, because if somebody were to say today a cure will be available by this date, then it is very easy to predict that from that day onwards, things will start ramping up. Because of the uncertainty of how this will end and when it will end, it is very hard to predict when that will start. And I think the recovery start is going to be purely based on that. And today's recovery is in a lot of ways Sensex going up, and the stock markets are going up in a lot of countries and going down. And I think it's very hard to say what it will look like on a sustainable basis. That's my personal view.
Mr. Gupta, over to you.
So it's a very interesting topic, to say the least. First of all, I think fundamentally consumption story in India will remain strong. That goes without saying, because thanks to our growing population, currently, again, as I said, 136 crores. So no reason why there is not going to be internal consumption. That's one. Sensex, I think it's a pretty, sentiment-driven behavior. So Sensex going up and down cannot be taken as a barometer of how a real economy is performing. To my mind, barring next 6-8 months to 1 year, which is not as foreseeable, I do see that India will definitely grow. I'm not really giving any big importance to any of these data. What we read, there's so many reports talking different things, but my guess is India will really bounce back next year, if not this year. We can even, there could be recovery started, which can start happening towards the third quarter. But 6 months, to my mind, is going to be a bit of a challenge. A lot of international funds are going to be there. Again, that's my view. There is a backlash against China, and India will definitely have huge opportunities because of this backlash itself. Many companies across the world would like to set up a shop in India, which is a huge opportunity. This Make in India dream of our Honorable Prime Minister, I think if we are able to unleash it, this is the opportunity to actually make it happen. So I'm pretty positive about overall thing. I think, again, to the points of jobs, there are certain sectors which will be over short term, mid term in trouble, which includes travel, tourism, hotel industry, even, but certain sectors at the same time could be pharma, electronics, e-commerce, tech industries, even infrastructure. India is going to be spending big time in building up our infrastructure, which is resilient. chemicals, food and agro. These are going to be the defense, aerospace. These are going to be the industries where a lot of investments will happen irrespective. So I think again, certain sectors, of course, will take a while to come back, but certain sectors will start doing pretty fine within 6 months itself. So that's my view on both jobs as well as economy.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta, and thank you, Mr. Jayaraman. It was a pleasure listening to you. We have at least 500 questions in front of us. We can't take that. Thank you so much for your time. We will keep on taking advice from you, but from the bottom of our heart, on behalf of the entire Amity group, we once again thank you for your valuable time. But if time permits you, please come on our industry advisory board. It would be a privilege to have you and take your advices. And students, I think the message is very clear from the Indian industry that things are not as bad as they seem to be. And I'm quite sure that like Rolls-Royce stocks have gone high by 11% and Jackson Group coming with the expansion plans. We are quite sure that the Indian economy is in the safe hands of the great leaders like both of these two stalwarts who have spoken to you. So don't worry, there will be jobs in the times to come. All of you don't over worry. I think it's a time when you can upskill yourself, take guidance from the people like Mr. Kishore and Mr. Gupta, and keep on shining. And thank you once again, both the industry captains. We are really thankful that you gave time, and this is what was needed at this point of time. Thank you very much.